Hello there, I'm Peter Bignell from Belgrove Distillery in Tasmania, which is the small island state off the southeast corner of Australia. I'm a 6th generation farmer and there are 2 more generations after me. As a farmer, we realise that we have to look after the land. We want to leave it in a better condition than when we came here. But it's not, we've only just realised recently that it's not just the land we have to look after the atmosphere and the oceans as well. Several years ago, about 14 years ago, I had a really good crop of rye grain that I grew here on the farm and I couldn't find a buyer for it. And so I decided, I'm going to build a whisky distillery. So I've got these old stables here that weren't being used on the farm and I built a small distillery inside these stables. One way of being sustainable is trying to avoid transport as much as possible. So we actually grow the grains here on Belgrove, only a few hundred metres away from the distillery. One of the main crops I grow is rye, and I like that because especially old-fashioned varieties grow very tall, and all that straw is actually carbon dioxide that's now locked up. And we don't burn that, we work it back into the soil by the animals, and very occasionally we have to chip it in with a plough. But rye is also really good because it's very drought tolerant and disease tolerant. And we also do rotational cropping, so we don't just crop the one crop all the time. We rotate different crops to make sure the soil doesn't get depleted of any particular nutrients, and we can also build up nutrients by using other types of crops. So to be sustainable, we have to reduce our use of energy. Quite a bit of energy comes from fossil fuels, which you have to reduce. So the fuel that we use here at Belgrove is waste cooking oil, waste vegetable oil that we'll collect from the fish and chip shops near here. Other source of energy we use is solar panels and electricity that we get from the public grid, which is hydroelectricity, and all these energy sources are very green. So another way we save energy at Belgrove is by making grain whiskies, not malt whiskies. Malting 100% of the grain and drying it uses a lot of energy. So we only malt 15% of the grain, and we malt it in this old repurposed clothes dryer. We put when it's finished malting after about 3 days, we just grind it up in a meat mint so we don't dry it. If you want to smoke the whiskey, then we will load this smoker up with either peat or sheep dung. We've started using sheep dung now because peat is actually a little bit like fossil fuel. We're burning that and it's releasing carbon into the atmosphere, but the sheep dung is totally recyclable. So another way to look after the environment is to recycle and repurpose as much as we can. So this is my mash tun, and that's 2 old dairy milk vats, and I actually found one of those under a tree when I was travelling around Tasmania one day. And so I just welded these 2 old vats together. The other things we use for fermenters, these are old big old wine vats that have served their purpose in the wine industry, and now we've repurposed them into fermenters. We feed our spent grains from the distillery to our sheep, and they recycle it into nutrients. And also, because we do a bit of wild fermentation, this is very acidic, and it's very good for the sheep's digestive system. This is the original still that I built here 13 years ago. Since then, I built a continuous still that is actually dismantled at the moment, but the continuous still is very, very energy efficient and also uses 0 cooling water. But both these stills run on waste cooking oil, which runs through a little burner underneath the still that shoots a flame out and boils the contents of the still. Like a lot of distilleries around the world, we mature our spirits in barrels that have had a previous use. And once we finish with them the first time, we actually reshave and recooper them here on site, which saves transport carting them to cooperage and back again. But as well as making whiskey here, we get products from wineries, breweries and cideries that have made products that they're not quite happy with, and we distill them and age them here and turn them into lovely, beautiful products. For instance, this is a brandy that was from 17 pallets of wine that were due to go to the rubbish tip. I've distilled it and aged it here at Belgrove, and I've got a lovely brandy now. Right, cheers from Tasmania.